Just I've talked about taking care of your tools before and putting them away and taking care of your toys in much the same way because as you're a child and your job is play, toys are your tools. Anyway, for the past week or so, I've been looking for a trowel that I know I have and I know I bought. Now, a trowel is a little shovel. It's about this big, so the blade of the shovel is just about as long as the handle of the shovel. It's narrow, it comes to a point. So it's narrow and comes to a point. And what this does is it's useful for gardening because it's just the perfect size to dig up a little bit of earth and plant a bulb. And I started growing some onions, and the onions are so small because I started them from seeds that I'm going to overwinter them. But they were so crowded because I put seeds in, and they were at a good spacing for when they were little, but I needed to take the bulbs and I needed to space them. And some of the bulbs had actually come up out of the ground a little bit, so they had to be buried down a little deeper. So I intended to get my trowel and do this. And I knew I had a trowel because I could remember buying the trowel. Because when I went to Lowe's to buy the trowel, the people there were less than helpful. I was like, hey, I'm looking for a trowel. And they go and they look it up and they're like, masonry, far side. It's like, well, yeah, there's a masonry trowel, but I need a gardening trowel. Like, no, it's over in masonry. So I went over in masonry. They didn't even have the masonry trowel, which is kind of like a cake server. It's flat, triangular, and the handle is kind of set at an angle, which is good for spreading cement. Not good so much for digging up bulbs because normal gardening trowels have a little bit of curve to them so they can scoop up the dirt and it doesn't like slosh off. Anyway, so I was asking for the trowel and they didn't find it. I went back and I asked the person. They were like, no, there's nothing. It's like, this is the gardening section. It should be over here because it's gardening. And this is a gardening implement. And they went and they looked and they got somebody else and they were looking and they were typing in and finally they got a manager over and the manager's like, what do you want? I want a little teeny tiny shovel. Because I knew once I said trowel and then he's like, oh, a trowel. It's like, wow, yes, a trowel. It's like, okay, over here. It was like 2 aisles over because they have all the hand tools together. And so I got my trowel. So I remembered this whole story because this was like an hour of running back and forth across a huge store to get a little shovel that has a particular use. And I needed the shovel then. It's like, okay. So I went, it's like, okay, so I have a trowel. And so I looked by the seeds because I thought, oh, the trowel might be by the seeds. I looked in the shed and I found a little gardening rake in there because in the shed I keep some of the gardening tools. I have gloves. I have gloves there for gardening and pulling poison ivy because poison ivy just sort of shows up randomly in the yard and I've had bad reactions to it. So the moment I see it, I use my sailor words and I put on my gloves and I pull the poison ivy and I carry it off back into the woods and I carefully take off the gloves. So I have a little garden rake there and I thought, oh, my trowel should be there. No. It's like I also have shovels in the shed, so I have gardening stuff in the shed. And it's like, okay, let's look in the garage. And in the garage, I have shovels and I have spade and I have more rakes and I have pruning shears and a big pruning hook and I have all sorts of other things. And I didn't see the trowel there. And so for a week, I went back to each of these locations going, okay, where is my trowel? Where is my trowel? And finally I found it hanging up on a hook in the garage right next to the tray with the stand with the shovels and the rakes and all of that stuff. So it was in grabbing distance. I was standing right next to it, but I was looking down instead of up. But anyway, so it's important to take care of your tools because if you don't take care of your tools and put them away, you tend to lose them. And so I don't think I'm being a hypocrite by saying, you need to take care of your tools when I'm not perfect at it. I try to be better at it, and I tell you to be better at it so that you don't have to learn the hard way of spending a week to try and find a trowel. So it's like I'm trying to teach you to be better than I am, and I'm working at being better myself. So, not really hypocrisy, kind of maybe a little bit, but because I realize that it's a deficiency in myself, I think that's the big difference. So, take care of your tools. And that's why.